Hello and welcome back, friends. Today we'll talk about a very famous poem written by John Milton. The title of the poem is On His Blindness. Before we begin to talk about the poem, let us understand a few things about Milton and his period. John Milton was born on 9th December 1608 and died on 8th November 1674. He was an English poet and an intellectual. He served as a civil servant for Commonwealth of England under its Council of State and also under Oliver Cromwell. During 1645 and 1660, there was a Commonwealth rule in England. Oliver Cromwell became the Prime Minister and ruled England from 1645 to 1660. This period is also known as Commonwealth Period in England. In 1642, England witnessed a civil war which resulted in the imprisonment of King Charles I and exile of his son King Charles II. King Charles I was beheaded in 1649. After the death of Oliver Cromwell in 1660, King Charles II was brought back to England from France and monarchy was restored. Therefore, period from 1660 is also known as a restoration period in England. Let us try to understand a few things about the works of Milton. Milton is popularly known for his masterpiece called Paradise Lost. It is an epic. This epic was published in 1667. Along with Paradise Lost, Milton has written Paradise Regained, published in 1671, Samson Agonistes, published in 1671, El Allegro, published in 1632, Second Penseroso, published in 1632, Lycidas, published in 1637, Comus, published in 1634, Areopagitica, published in 1644, and his famous poem When I Consider How My Light is Spent, which is also known as On His Blindness, was published in 1652. First of all, let's try to understand a few key facts about Milton the poet and the poem itself. Milton was deeply devoted to God. He was known as Lady Christ in his college days. Milton himself says, I'm here to justify the ways of God to man. Milton's sonnet, On His Blindness, the present sonnet that we're talking about, was first appeared in Milton's 1673 collection of poems simply as the 19th sonnet in the collection, or it is known as Sonnet 19. It is also referred to by its first line, When I consider how my light is spent. Identifying a poem by the first line is a standard practice in English poetry. You can see it even in case of Shakespeare's sonnet or Milton's sonnets or Spenser's sonnet. This poem is also known as On His Blindness. However, we must remember that this was not the title given by Milton himself. If this was the title given by Milton, it would have been On My Blindness rather than On His Blindness. So we must understand this is the title given by someone else to this poem. Actually, this title was given to this poem by Bishop Newton, a writer and clergyman, almost 100 years later. This is one of the finest poems in English literature. Let us first of all read out this poem. The poem reads, When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker and present, my true account least he returning chide, doth God exact day labour light denied? I fondly ask, but patience to prevent that murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly. Thousand at his bidding speed and post over land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. Let us try to understand the meaning of the poem. Look at the first line, when I consider how my light is spent. Ere half my days in this dark world and white is the second line. First line means when I consider. Consider is to take into consideration or think about. When I think about how my light means eyesight, how my eyesight is spent. We also need to understand that Milton was blind by the time he started writing this poem. So light here means eyesight. Milton lost his eyesight and he was blind. So he says, when I consider, when I think about, or when I take into consideration how my light is spent, that is, how my light, how my eyesight has gone, used and gone, how I became blind. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days, the word ere means before, half my days means my life, before half my life in this dark world and wide. Now he's speaking about the world. What kind of world is this according to Milton? According to Milton, this is a dark and wild world. So Milton says, when I think about how my light has gone before half my life in this dark and wild world, and also about, in the next lines he speaks about something else, and also about, and that one talent which is death to hide. Milton says there is some talent, and that talent would be hidden by death only, because that is going to last with him till he dies. So he says, and that one talent which is death to hide lodged with me useless. That one talent which is with me, that is lying with me useless. It is of no use now, though myself, more bent, I am more inclined towards, though my soul more bent to serve there with my Maker. Maker is God. With my God, I want to serve my God. But I am here blind, and one talent. What is this talent? This talent must be the talent of thinking and writing. And as the poet is blind here, he is not capable of writing now. So he says that one talent which is lodged with me useless, because it is useless now as I am blind, though my soul more bent to serve there with my Maker, though I want to serve the God, and present my true account, and present and show what I am actually, lest he returning chide. He, in the sense God, because I'm afraid that God would probably scold me for not using my talent, lest he returning chide. And in the next line, poet says, doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask. Fondly in the sense foolishly. I ask a foolish question to myself. Has God denied me the light on the exact day when I was capable of working? This is the question that creeps in the mind of the writer. In simple words, the speaker says, when he thinks about how his eyesight is gone before half of his life in this dark and wild world, and about the one talent which would remain with him throughout the life, and which has been lying with him useless now, though his soul strongly desires to serve the God with this talent, so that God would not scold him for not using his abilities. Try to understand the fact that in the ancient world, a talent was also a standard for weight used to measure money. The parable of talents is mentioned in chapter 25 of Gospel of Matthew. A lord gives 3 of his servants some money, that is talents, to hold on to when he leaves for a trip. Two of them use it to gain more money. The third servant just buries the money. When Lord comes to know about this, he exiles the third servant into the darkness for not using his money properly. There is no reference to specific talent in the poem. However, it can be best interpreted as John Milton's ability to think and write. The speaker in the poem says that his talent is useless and his soul desires to use his skills in the service of his maker. His maker is God. The word maker refers to God here. The speaker wants to present his true account to the Lord so that Lord would not scold him for his failure to deliver. With the help of the talent that has lodged with him useless, the speaker desires to serve God. The speaker is worried that God would chide him as the Lord did to the third servant in the parable of talents. If the speaker turns out to have wasted his profits, he worries that God will scold or chide him. And if God is anything like the Lord from the parable, the speaker could get cast into a more fearful darkness. After having spoken about his anxiety and fear, the speaker tells us that he asks a question fondly. The word fondly in archaic English means foolishly. The question he asks is, doth God exact day labor light denied? The speaker asks if God has denied him ability to see at the exact time of his delivering. Day labor means the day of work. The line can be simply written as, has God denied the light on the exact day of labor? The first section of the poem ends here. Have a careful look at the poem. You will see that the full stop is only after kingly. If you look at the poem, you will find that the full stop is after kingly. That means the first full stop in the poem appears in the 12th line. That is after the word kingly. However, there is a strong pause in the 8th line too. That is, I fondly ask. After I fondly ask, you will find a semicolon and the sentence is continued with the help of a conjunction but. So the meaning is carried forward of the earlier stanza. Let us try to understand the grammar of all these lines. When I consider how my light is spent before half my days in this dark and wide world, and when I also consider that one talent that is with me and which would be there with me until I die is lying with me useless, lodged, lying with me useless. Though my soul is more bent to serve my Maker and present my true account. What is my true account? My true account is to be true to the God. I told you, John Milton once said, I'm here to justify the ways of God to man. So that is something that Milton wants. Milton wants to use his talent and justify the ways of God to man. But further he says, lest he returning chide. There is also a fear in the mind of the poet. He says, it is likely possible that God would scold me, chide in the sense, scold me, that God would scold me for what? God would scold me for not using my abilities, and therefore in the next line there is a question, next and the other half of the next. You will find a question. The question ends, I fondly ask. So poet says, does God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask. What does poet ask? Poet fondly in the sense foolishly, poet foolishly asks to himself that whether God has denied him the light on the exact day of labor, that when he was capable of working, has God taken away his light? taken away his ability to write? That is what poet wants to say, and this is the first part of the poem. Structurally, if you look at this poem, this is a Petrarchan sonnet, an example of Petrarchan sonnet. This is not an example of English sonnet. Milton has followed the style of Petrarch. Italian sonnet, Petrarchan sonnet is also called Italian sonnet. So this is an example of Italian sonnet. In Italian sonnet, you find an octave and a sestet. In the first 8 lines, one thought is communicated, and in the next 6 lines, we generally find the turn of the thought, which is called volta. So in this case, this seems to be an example of Italian or Petrarchan sonnet. We'll talk about the structure and the figure of speech in the poem in the later part of the discussion. Let us first of all try to understand the next part of the poem. The next part is a turn. But patience to prevent that murmur soon replies. Doth God exact day labor light denied, I fondly ask. This was the line to which this is an answer. The answer is to this line. Try to understand the point that there is a question in the mind of the poet. It arises in the mind of the poet, and he asks, fondly, foolishly asks, doth God exact day labor light denied? And the reply comes from within the poet himself. But patience is a quality, and it is personified here. But patience to prevent that murmur. Which murmur? Patience to prevent the murmur that arises in the mind of the poet, that if God has denied him the light on the exact day of labor, to prevent that murmur, patience comes and soon replies, immediately replies. This is the reply given by the patience of the poet. God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. God, what does patience say? Patience say, God does not need either man's work or his own gifts. The gifts with the man are actually the gifts given by the God. God does not need them. God does not need man's work also. That is what patience replies. God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. In the next line, patience tells poet, who best bear his mild yoke. Try to understand. There are 2 words taken together, mild and yoke. Yoke is a wooden structure kept on the necks of the animals to control them. Now this yoke is considered to be mild yoke. God does not give full freedom to the people. He keeps some limitations on them. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. People who believe that whatever limitations God has given them has some reason, and those people who believe in it and be happy with whatever condition they are in, they serve the God best. Therefore, patience replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, his means God's mild yoke, they serve him best, serve the God best. His state is kingly. How is the state of God? God's state is kingly. God is like a big king, an emperor. Thousands at his bidding speed, thousands on the wish of the God, on the order of the God, start running. And what do? Thousands at his bidding speed and post over land and ocean without rest. And they post themselves over land and ocean everywhere without rest. This is actually a reference given to the minions like angels and other minions, other small creatures that work on the order of the God, and post over land and ocean without rest. Thousands at his bidding, speed and post over land and ocean without rest. They even don't take the rest. And the last line, poet says, they also serve who only stand and wait. The last line is an answer to the question, doth God exact day, labor, light denied? The answer is given here. They also serve who only stand and wait. You do not need to do something for God. You should keep on waiting for the right time. Once the time is ripe, you will get an opportunity to work. So you're also serving God if you are not doing anything, but you are happy with the condition you are kept in. They also serve who only stand and wait. Thus, in the second section, there is a turn of thought. In the concluding part of the first section, the speaker tells that he foolishly asks a question if God has denied him light of his eyes on the exact day of labor. This question that the speaker asks is the doubt that creeps in the mind about God's scheme. Nonetheless, in the following section, poet corrects his mistake. He says that patience immediately replies in order to stop the stupid murmur in his mind. Patience is personified here. Patience, as if it is a person, replies that God does not need man's work or his own gifts. Those who bear his mild yoke serve him best. God's status is like the king. Thousands run on his order and post themselves over land and ocean without rest. And they also serve who only stand and wait. It is not necessary that you should do something to serve God. People who do not do anything and do not complain are the real servants of God. Yoke is a wooden crosspiece that is attached to the neck of two animals and attached to the plow or cart they pull. In short, God moderates our freedom, and we should be happy with whatever things God has given us and whatever things denied us. This means accepting things as they come, especially sufferings and misfortune. Now let's try to understand a few structural complexities in the poem. If you look at the poem, there are many instances of enjambment in this poem. What is enjambment? Enjambment is also called run-on line. When one line runs into the next without a pause, it is called enjambment or run-on line in poetry. See the examples. When I consider how my light is spent, runs in the next line, near half my days in this dark world and wide. Another example is, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent, runs into the next line, to serve there with my maker and present. This line also runs into the next line, my true account list a returning child. See another example, doth God exact day, labor, light denied. This is a complete line in itself, but still it is continued in the next line, doth God exact day, labor, light denied? I fondly ask, and there is a pause. And but the patience to prevent runs into that murmur, soon replies, God doth not need. This line also runs into the next line, either man's work or his own gifts, who best runs into next line, bear his mild yoke, they also serve him best. His state runs into next is kingly. So there are plenty of examples in this poem of run-on line. Let us try to understand a few figures of speech used in this poem. First of all, we'll find many examples of metaphor and extended metaphor in this poem. Metaphor, comparing something with other things directly, that is without using the words like, such as, etc., is called metaphor. The examples of metaphor in the poem are light, God, and darkness. Light is eyesight, God is master and maker, lack of vision is darkness. God's rule over man is compared to the wooden yoke that guides farm animals. Another example of the figure of speech is personification. What is personification? Personification is use of language in which an idea, concept, or object is given human qualities. In this poem, there is an example of personification. Patience is personified here. Patience, like a person, replies to the doubt that creeps in the mind of the poet. Third figure of speech can be called alliteration, used in this poem. What is alliteration? Alliteration is repetition of a sound in the line of a poem. For example, this dark world and white is an example of alliteration because sound v is repeated. Similarly, exact day, labor, light denied. In this line, labor and light l sound is repeated. So this can also be called an example of alliteration. However, these are the only two sounds together. We'll talk about rhyme scheme and metrics of this poem now. Rhyme scheme of the poem is A B B A, A B B A, C D E, C D E. You can see the last sounds used in the poem. Let us read out the last syllables. Spent, wide, hide, bent, sent, hide, night, went, need, best, state, speed, rest, wait. So the rhyme scheme is A B B A, A B B A, C D E, C D E. First 8 lines rhyme A B B A, A B B A. There are 2 quatrains in the first 8 lines. However, that is an octave, and in the next 6 lines in the sestate, C D E, C D is the rhyme scheme. 3 lines rhyme together and next 3 lines rhyme together. So that is the rhyme scheme of Petrarchan sonnet or Italian sonnet. This is a typical example of Petrarchan sonnet or an Italian sonnet as far as rhyme scheme and structure is concerned. Now let us talk about the meter. If you carefully look at the poem or try to scan it, you will find 10 syllables in each of the line. If there are 10 syllables in each of the line, we take 2 syllables together. 2 syllables form a foot. Thus, there are 5 feet in this line. So this means this is a pentameter. Now there are types of pentameter. If the first syllable is unstressed and the second syllable is stressed, it is called iamb. Thus, this poem can also be called an example of iambic pentameter. However, there are a few instances in the poem where there is no pattern of iamb followed. However, pentameter is there. It is strictly written in the pentameter. Let us try to understand this. Let us try to understand the syllables in the first line first. When I consider how my light is spent. Second line, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide. So this is how the pattern is there. Now let us try to read out the poem according to its meter, according to the stressed and unstressed syllables. The first is unstressed, the second is stressed, the first is unstressed, the second is stressed, and in some cases there may not be so. So let's start reading. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve there with my Maker and present my true account, lest he returning kite, doth God exact day labor light denied. I fondly ask but patience to prevent, that murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts, who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best, his state is kingly. Thousands at his bidding sped and post over land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. This is the rhythm of the poem. This is how the rhythm goes. You also have to understand that there are a few instances in the poem which makes it a Petrarchan sonnet. Look at the line, doth God exact day labor light denied, I fondly ask. There is a semicolon. The natural strong pause within the line of a poem is called Sizura. So this can be called an example of Sizura. And after that, there is a turn of thought, but patience to prevent that murmur soon replies. The thought turns from this, I fondly ask, and the turn of thought is called volta, and this is a special characteristic feature of Petrarchan sonnet or Italian sonnet. This we need to understand, therefore it is called a Typical example of Petrarchan sonnet. However, we should also remember that the pause is not after 8 lines, but it is between the line number 8. That is after I fondly ask. This is a small deviation from a typical Petrarchan sonnet. However, this poem is regarded as a typical Petrarchan sonnet. Let us talk about the use of words and spellings of the words. You will find the spelling used mild, M-I-L-D-E, and yoke, Y-O-A-K. Actual spelling is M-I-L-D and Y-O-K-E, that we need to understand. And there are pauses. Look at the spelling of the word wait. It is W-A-I-T-E. These were the spellings of the words written during the times of Milton. Now they are different. So we need to understand that also. Poem is extremely beautiful and easy to understand. I hope you have understood it. If you want to have the notes of this poem, written notes of this poem in PDF, please write your email ID in the comment box and I'll straight away mail the notes to you. I hope you have understood this video. If you have understood it, please do like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.